Some people blend into the background. They're seen but never really noticed. John Carter, the janitor of one of Manhattan's most prestigious high-rises, was one of those people. Every morning, executives in tailored suits rushed past him, unaware that he knew more about them than they could imagine. John wasn't just a janitor, he was an observer. He knew which tenants left at 7:30 a.m., who worked late, and who seemed burdened by unseen struggles. But today, something was different. Something was wrong. John was wiping down the lobby desk when he noticed Mr. Richard Owens, a businessman from the 45th floor, walking toward the elevator. His hands were shaking. John had seen Mr. Owens every day. He was always composed, always in control. But today there was something in his eyes, a deep, unsettling emptiness. As the elevator doors slid shut, John felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew that look. Hours later, he checked the security cameras. His breath caught in his throat. Mr. Owens was heading to the rooftop. John's pulse quickened. He had to act fast. John had spent years watching people, understanding them. Right now, every instinct told him that if he didn't act, something terrible would happen. He rushed to the elevator, pressing the button repeatedly, his heart pounding. When the doors finally opened, he sprinted to the rooftop. The cold wind blasted against his face. There he was. Mr. Owens stood at the edge, looking down at the city below. John hesitated. He had to choose his words carefully. "Mr. Owens!" The businessman flinched, turning around startled. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. John stepped forward cautiously. "I could ask you the same thing." The wind howled between the towering buildings. "Did someone send you?" Mr. Owens asked suspiciously. John shook his head. "Number? I noticed things, and I noticed you." Mr. Owens let out a bitter laugh. "Nobody notices me. Not really." John tilted his head. "That's not true. I've been watching you for years, and something's different today." Mr. Owens clenched his jaw, looking away, his shoulders shaking slightly. "It doesn't matter." "It does." John took a slow step closer. "I know how it feels to think everything is falling apart. But trust me, this isn't the answer." Mr. Owens turned back, his posture collapsing as if the weight was too much. "My company is near bankruptcy. My wife left me. My kids barely speak to me. I spent my life building something, and now it's all slipping away." John nodded. "I know." Mr. Owens blinked. What?" John gave a small, knowing smile. "Being a janitor isn't just about cleaning. It's about listening, observing. You've been carrying this weight for weeks." Mr. Owens let out a shaky breath, his guard lowering. "I feel like a failure," John exhaled, looking over the skyline. "People think money or success will make them whole, but no one gets through life alone." Mr. Owens wiped his face, fingers trembling. "So what do I do now?" John extended a hand. "First, step away from that ledge. Then we grab a coffee and you tell me everything." A long pause. The wind howled again. And then, Mr. Owens took a step back. For the first time in months, maybe years, someone had really seen him. The two men sat in a quiet coffee shop nearby. Mr. Owens stirred his coffee absent-mindedly. "How did you know?" he finally asked. John sipped his coffee. "Because I've been there. Different circumstances, but same feeling." Mr. Owens frowned. "And how did you get past it?" John smiled faintly. "By realizing that rock bottom doesn't mean the end. It just means you have to build differently." Mr. Owens took a deep breath and nodded. For the first time in a long time, hope flickered in his eyes. The next day, Mr. Owens returned to work with a new mindset. He sought financial advice, reorganized his priorities, and started rebuilding. But most importantly, he no longer ignored the people around him, especially the ones who were always there, watching, listening. Because sometimes the greatest secrets are held by those we overlook the most. And sometimes the person who saves you is the last person you'd expect. And that brings us to the end of this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories.